Maybe there is life after death. Do you believe so?
I am totally convinced. Death is a transition. When we are born, we put on a cover, a case. That is the body. We carry it for a while, but our true essence endures eternally.
What were the experiences that the patients told you about?
The first thing they notice is an out-of-body experience, that they feel a sense of peace, harmony, and joy. And finally, everyone talks about a light they see. When they see the light, the feeling of peace, harmony, joy, and above all love reaches levels never experienced in the human dimension.
And does this go from body to body using different bodies?
Man, now they are touching on another topic, which is a more delicate topic, which is reincarnation. It's true, reincarnation exists.
But how can you believe it with such certainty? Why?
Clinically, there are cases, there are very serious studies, Ian Stevenson, Brian Weiss, and then there are also objective proofs. With advanced hypnosis, past lives can be recognized, restored, and remembered.
What would you say is the purpose of life then?
The purpose of life is...
Hello everyone, and welcome to a new podcast from Nude Project. Many times we live with our backs to death, as if it had nothing to do with us. But it exists, and someday you and I are going to die. But what is there afterward? Today we talk with a man who has saved hundreds of lives, and some of the patients he has revived have confessed to him that they saw something more. You might think he's making it up, but he's not a conspiracy theorist. He is a surgeon, a highly reputed scientist who, after years of research, is going to tell you something you won't be able to believe. Manuel Sans Segarra, welcome.
Raise your hand if you know what Nude Project is. Damn.
Good afternoon, Presti. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm excited, especially because this is aimed at the youth. The youth is a group that I truly respect, and I am enthusiastic about being with them, understanding them, and helping them in any way I can.
Well, for us even more, and hopefully we catch a bit of your wisdom. And it's curious that a week ago I started researching your videos, and for the first time I discovered a scientist and not a conspiracy theorist, talking about the possibility that there might be life after death. Do you believe that?
Totally convinced. I am convinced by my experiences that I have had throughout my professional life, especially fundamentally through NDEs, near-death experiences. They are a phenomenon. Experiences that patients have whom we diagnose with clinical death for various reasons, meaning they are in cardiac arrest, respiratory arrest, without reflexes and without brain activity. At 15 or 20 seconds after the heart stops, the electroencephalogram is flat, meaning these patients have no cerebral mental activity. These patients, the ones we managed to revive with cardiopulmonary resuscitation measures, well, some of them told me a series of experiences that caught my attention. And so I dedicated myself to researching, looking for literature, contacting experts in other disciplines to find what every scientist seeks in the face of a phenomenon, whether organic or emotional, which is the cause, what we call etiopathogenesis, or the intimate mechanism of production, which is pathophysiology.
And the first contact with a near-death experience, what was it?
It was precisely because of a patient that I was the chief on duty that day in the emergency service of my hospital, Belvich University Hospital, who had a very serious traffic accident and was brought to the hospital. And upon admission, the diagnosis was already clinical death. He had several fractures, hemorrhages, and so on. In other words, he had the characteristics we mentioned. We resuscitated this patient with resuscitation measures. You know, they are like external cardiac massage, intracardiac puncture with adrenaline to stimulate cardiac contractility, and then apply the defibrillator, the electric shocks to recover the cardiac contractility. The patient recovered, we operated on him, he fully recovers. And in the post-operative period, it was the first case that expressed this to me. I also had no experience with this phenomenon. And he told me about a near-death experience, very typical, and that's where my interest was piqued.
Were you on duty at that time?
He was the head of emergencies that day at the emergency service of the Belvitge University Hospital. I operated on the patient.
How much time passed between when the operation ended and they managed to revive him until he recounted the experience?
Days, because this patient also had a cranioencephalic trauma and spent days intubated, monitored in intensive care in a coma. And when he woke up, he then moved to my surgery ward, and it was 2 or 3 weeks later when he told me about this experience.
Stuff, huh?
Strong, Mother of God.
I haven't said anything in this podcast. It's like, I don't know what to add, if I feel intimidated. It's just that I find it hard to process how it's possible that the patient describes something like that, and especially how you don't find alternative answers, right? If the patient was in a coma, didn't you think, well, what they're telling me are hallucinations typical of any dream? What led you to think they weren't hallucinations, but that something really strange was happening?
The doctors, the training of doctors, and it is what I teach my medical students or used to teach and to postgraduate residents, well, we instill in them and train them with the scientific method, Cartesian and Newtonian, materialistic, objective method. So, I have this training, and precisely when the patient told me this, I was the first to be surprised, because I thought and reasoned with all logic, because I treated the patient. I say, if I have this patient dead for a few minutes, how can it be that during these minutes this patient tells me things? What they describe is spectacular, really spectacular. So, with my scientific background, I thought these are hallucinations. I can't explain it. So I sought advice and information from others, from doctors in other disciplines. I contacted neurologists who are experts in neurophysiology. I contacted psychiatrists and psychologists who are experts in the human psyche, to see if they could explain to me what the intimate mechanism of this production was, because with my materialistic training in the scientific method, I couldn't find explanations. And the meeting was very curious.
What did they tell you?
I told them, I said, I see this. They didn't even let me finish presenting my request. They told me, these are hallucinations, because nerve cells are very sensitive to the lack of blood supply, and if there is cardiac arrest, they do not receive blood. Of the neurons in general, their physiology is quickly altered, and then their dynamics are altered, and they say things that do not make sense. They classify them as hallucinations. And then I said to them, let's compare it. I said, the hallucinations you see in your patients, do they have a logical structure? No, they are completely absurd. The hallucination of a patient is what is seen, for example, in a psychotic episode, in schizophrenia, or in any type of hallucination that psychiatrists see. They are absurd. They have no logic. I told them, the experiences that have been told to me are tremendously logical. Secondly, I told them the patients repeat a series of items. That is, from one patient to another, a series of items is repeated. The differences are more about nuance than concept. They told me, no, the hallucinations of one patient have nothing to do with those of another. They are completely different. And thirdly, my patients remember this their whole lives. It is a tremendous impact that conditions them. And no, hallucinations even make them feel ashamed. They forget about them. They don't want to know anything. And finally, near-death experiences have a very profound psychological impact on patients. It changes their existential conception and alters their life dynamics, their vital role. The hallucinations, psychiatrists tell me, absolutely do not have, if they forget, they don't want to know anything. So I told them, a hallucination has nothing to do clinically with a near-death experience. They acknowledged it.
But there are more things still.
Let's move on to explain what the experiences were that the patients told you about. And
they are very long, but I will go to the most important data because it explains many details. The first thing they notice is an out-of-body experience. And from an elevated position, they see perfectly what is happening. They are immensely surprised because they see their body on a stretcher and a group of medical staff performing resuscitation maneuvers and do not understand what is happening. They cannot communicate with the medical staff. They cannot communicate in their state using the usual means of communication, speaking, etc. So, for example, another case, which was precisely a medical staff member from my hospital, who knew us, approached me while I was resuscitating him. He tried to touch me, and when he touched me, he passed through me.
And did they look at each other? Could they see each other?
Absolutely. They see themselves with the structure, shape, and design. They fully self-recognize.
And do they move like people?
With such ease, to the point that they tell you, for example, I told them, it's very curious because during this phenomenon, they explain to you what is happening at a distance. That's all. They told me exactly what was happening throughout my emergency department. What was in the next room, what was being operated on in the operating room, which is very far away. But other patients, there are cases described in the biography that tell you about someone being resuscitated in the United States with everything happening on the other side of the world, in Australia. So, I asked them, how is it that you can move in this way? They say, if I think I'm in Australia, at the same moment I'm in Australia. And they tell you exactly what is happening down to the smallest detail at whatever distance they want. For example, what my patient told me, I later verified with the computers, and there was exactly the stuff he mentioned. The patients in the operating room told me they were operating on a femoral neck fracture, the trauma team. Indeed, they were. That is to say, they tell you with complete accuracy. Then after going through all this situation, they have a feeling of peace, harmony, and joy. They contact beings, which they call beings of light, who help them. And they can also contact deceased relatives. This is very typical. This patient contacted her mother, who had died. She felt tremendous joy. And finally, everyone talks about the light they see. And when they see the light, the sensation of peace, harmony, joy, and above all love reaches levels never experienced in the human dimension. It is common that they see life like a screen, as if it were a screen, the most important events.
Does that happen to everyone or just to some?
So this can be complete or not complete. That is, they can have all the items, or they can be total or partial.
But there are always items that repeat.
These data, they always have one or another. They are even classified according to the number of items they have. This classification was made by Bruce Grayson, an American. According to the number of items, they are classified as more or less. And finally, the beings of light said, Yakuria, you have to return to your body because you have not finished your life cycle in the human dimension, which is three-dimensional from an energetic point of view. And they refuse. They don't want to leave because the feeling of peace and harmony is so extraordinary that they don't want to return. But they had to return. This is more or less what the patients recount.
And how do you code life from now on, right?
Hard to believe this, huh?
It's crazy.
It's hard to believe.
You have it very clear from what it seems.
If they take the global bibliography, I have few cases, but there are thousands and thousands of writings in top-level global research centers, university level, with people, even Nobel Prize winners. That is to say, this is a fact really demonstrated countless thousands and thousands of times. In other words, it is not an anecdotal thing, but it is very frequent. And curiously, they all explain the same thing, with items changed. Here they also include landscapes, music, many side aspects, which some include or not. But more or less the important ones that are repeated are those I have mentioned.
Well, I have a lot of curiosities about the details of what that dimension they are experiencing is like. I mean, apart from them looking at their body and seeing it as normal, if they touch, in your case, when they touched you, they passed through you. But when it came to moving, could they open a door or did they also pass through it?
They go through it.
Did they go through it?
Everything that is three-dimensional, material in our world, they pass through it, they cannot grasp it.
And what can they grab? There are things...
But it is in another dimension. They are in what is called the astral world, which is two-dimensional. There are 11 dimensions in the universe. We are three-dimensional, we have three dimensions. They are two-dimensional, two dimensions. In this dimension, they can grasp things, but in another dimension, not in ours, they cannot grasp items.
And what can they grab then in their dimension?
Things from the other dimension.
Like which ones?
Whatever they want. They see fields. They see people. They see whatever they see. that they explain to you, they can contact them.
So, my big question about all this is, does this only happen in these near-death experiences, or is death already this?
Death is a transition. Death is not the end, it is a transition. When we are born, we put on a cover, a case that is the body, which is stardust, matter that the universe lends us. For a time we carry it, but our true essence, when it has completed its journey, separates from the body, which is physical death. But our real existence, which is what they talk about, endures eternally.
Like snakes which shed their skin and...
They shed the skin, but the snake continues. We remove the skin, the material suit that is our body, but our true essence, what makes us unique and exclusive, this is eternal.
I am smoking on this train in the middle of nowhere because life is only one and you shouldn't let the train pass you by. If there's only one life, are you going to live it without being subscribed? Seriously? As an incentive, I am giving away 3 sweatshirts to those who are subscribed and comment something you want to do before you die.
And does this go from body to body using different bodies?
Now they are touching on another topic, which is a more delicate topic, which is reincarnation. That is, when this cycle ends, another cycle begins. It is true, reincarnation exists.
But how can you believe it with such certainty? Why?
First, because clinically there are cases. There are very serious studies by psychiatrists, by Ian Stevenson, Brian Weiss. And then there are also objective certified proofs. With advanced hypnosis, past lives can be recognized, restored, and remembered. And then there are anecdotal cases such as, for example, this is certified. Children who, without knowing anything, have a great desire to go to a country they have never studied or known. And when they go there, they recognize things. They even say, there was a bakery here, there was this and that. And they look it up at the town hall, and indeed they were there. And notice how curious it is that sometimes they start speaking without ever having studied the language of the country. This is certified.
And the feeling of peace, harmony, and joy that patients describe, is there no possibility that it is really, I don't know, the brain secreting some kind of hormone that produces that feeling as a defense mechanism so you don't suffer such a difficult moment? Or is it 100% due to the near-death experience?
The brain releases substances called neurotransmitters, which transmit the nerve impulse from one neuron, from one cell to another, which are called neurons. And there are some called opioids, such as enkephalins, for example, which provide a sensation of peace, harmony, and well-being. But the threshold achieved with this has absolutely nothing to do with the threshold of happiness, peace, harmony, joy, and love that they experience in the other dimension.
Can this be measured?
The patients themselves tell you. The patients who have experienced it say, I have lived for many years in the human dimension, and I know what joy, peace, harmony, and love are. But what is experienced on the other side, they often tell us, there is no terminology in our language to properly comment on or express the experiences one has.
I mean, not even an orgasm reaches the...
Nothing.
Zero?
It has nothing to do with it. It's another dimension.
Purely with the confidence you have, it's impossible to tell you otherwise. I don't feel in a position to do so.
No, I don't have to. No, what I have done, I precisely operate within the scientific method. I want scientific evidence, that's what I've been looking for. For example, I'm going to tell you about a scientific proof that is definitive and very important. Functional magnetic resonance imaging was done. I don't know if you've heard of magnetic resonance. It's a test that through electromagnetic waves that pass through the body, achieved with powerful electromagnets, gives us very precise images, especially of the soft tissues. For the brain, it's excellent. It gives us very good images of the brain for diagnosing tumors or diseases, whatever they may be. And there is a form called functional, which means that at the same time it gives the image, we see which area of the brain becomes active. For example, when thinking, when having an emotion, when having a memory, Then we see which part of the brain is activated, and we can make a map of the activities of the areas that become active in relation to the mental activity we are evaluating. So these patients underwent a functional magnetic resonance imaging and were asked to recount their entire near-death experience while the scan was being performed. And they recounted it. And then they looked at what appeared in the images, and the following was observed. First, when they recounted it, the temporal lobe was activated, especially this area here. We have already said that this is where the highest activities occur: intellectual activity, rationality, and free will. Then this shows, as the neurologist himself said, and the neurobiologist, that what is being recounted has a logical structure which hallucinations do not have. Secondly, when she recounted having an experience that had a significant emotional impact on her, for example, the one where she saw her mother, and they described it, the temporal lobe was activated. This is where a person's emotional activity is manifested. And what caught attention is that when they described an object, pay close attention, that they had seen from a distance far away. During the near-death experience, in these journeys they take, they had seen a material object that had impacted them. This conditions memory. So this image was memorized in the occipital lobe, and when it was described, the occipital lobe was activated. Do you know what the neurologist told me? He says this can't be true. I say, man, the images are here, and I asked, why does it surprise you? He says, because the patient doesn't lie. Pay close attention. The patient is not lying. They are describing an image they saw in the near-death experience from a great distance. This, as it impacted him, conditioned memory in the occipital lobe, where images are interpreted. There are special neurons called mirror neurons, where the memory of objects is stored. And when explaining it, I said, after a long time, there is interference. What he recounts with the memory he had stored, and the occipital lobe is activated, so he is not lying, he really saw it. This is objective proof, which is what I seek as a surgeon, as someone who is based on a scientific method,